I really want to touch on this for people that are pretty serious about getting the real estate license. What are the true pros of getting one and the cons? And even in like the actual going through the testing and everything that way, all of the I guess I'm trying to give people as much detail behind this of what it takes to get your license, and then understanding, hey, here's the good and the bad of it.
Right. Yeah. Let's riff on this for a little bit too, because whatever you come up with as well and that you think about, but pros, when I think about like the pros, we mentioned it a little bit before, right? Is like access to all the properties on the MLS, access to tools
Yes.
that the average person doesn't just have at their disposal. It completely opens up a network now of other realtors in your market who see you as a licensed professional, maybe haven't done a deal with you, but you say, hey, I work with XYZ brokerage, and they know that brokerage, or right. So you have colleagues now within the industry.
Yep.
That gives you an opportunity to network with more. Maybe you make some friends. So I think that you could do that without the real estate license. Don't get me wrong, but having that is kind of like a ticket into the good old boys club, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of puts you in the game. Yeah, that's a big thing. I think that's a big draw for people. I think it's intimidating for people that are outside of that circle, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. I think the cons that are coming to mind, and we can go back and forth, pros and cons. I mean, it's not free, right? It costs over $1,000, I think, to initially get your license, and it's close to $1,000 every single year with renewals, literally just to send in a check to say renew. And then every 2 years you have to take continuing education. Now that's not necessarily a con, right? Because it's good to stay up with the industry and everything. But I'm just saying, from a guy who, wasn't exactly the number one test taker in his high school or college, that's not one of my favorite things to do. So, every 2 years you have to take continuing education.
Yeah. I mean, we did some math on this, Mike, too. Like, your coursework is going to be around $1,000, and then you're taking that test, which is like $150 or $200 per time taking it. We've had people take it 4 times, Yeah. And then usually like fees to be part of the MLS, your local chapter that's sourcing all the listings and being a part of that. And you're being a part of that association. Especially if there's like office fees, if you've got your own office and things, is $250 to $500 a quarter. I mean, so we're not talking about, this is just, these bills would hit you. And if you're not necessarily using your license, they kind of hurt.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look in your MLS, if I look in mine, I can almost guarantee you that the amount of registered agents in my MLS for the start of 2023 is significantly less than it was for the start of 2022, because the market is wildly different than it was 12 months ago, right? 12 months ago, in the start of 2022, we just came off of 21, which was the best real estate year for a lot of agents ever. And you didn't have to be a good agent. You just had to literally show up, and you would pick up clients at a listing, because there were so many people walking around that they probably lost their realtor inside and they needed somebody to write the offer for them, right? So you literally didn't have to do anything. Now you're in a position where interest rates are high, inventory, the delta hasn't been met yet. And you actually have to work for your clients. You actually have to go out and do some work to find listings. And the people that were part-timers, you mentioned it before the break, like the part-time people, it's a tough gig part-time when things are tough. It's an easy gig when it's really, really easy. So,
and I mean, I like to shed light on that, man, because the real estate agency world is a sales world. And if you're a part-timer and you're taking part-time reps in a sales world, it's just the statistics that the top 20% sell 80% of all the houses, because they're the ones in the game. They're the ones going to the gym, if you will. They're the ones that know how to interact with these clients. They're updated on the contracts. They're seeing it every day. They're taking reps every day. Everybody in our office is still a full-time agent, and we just see ourselves having an advantage in our marketplace, because we're constantly keeping up to date on our everything that's going on with updates on our contracts in our market. We're constantly watching the hot sheet. We're constantly training twice a week in our office with everybody, having these conversations on different deal examples. It's hard to compete with our team, and I'm proud of our team for that because we're all so in it. And that's got to sound intimidating to someone that says, hey, I'm just going to kind of get this part-time and see how I do. Because when it comes to two different people, if people are looking for expertise and experience, you're going to compete with those people. And it's kind of a detraction that I'm stating this, but I also want to encourage people that if you're interested in this as a career path and as something that you do want to take seriously, and you do want to be in a sales capacity in order to create income for yourself, earned income, this can be an amazing catalyst to pouring that money into the asset class that you want. Kind of like Mike said it initially, creating capital here to pour it in over here. And we've always had that mindset.
Yeah, totally. I think another potential con would be, this is going to sound bad, so let me explain it, but this fiduciary responsibility as an investor, right? Because as an investor, your goal of every deal is to get it as close to zero as possible for your acquisition cost, and then to sell it for hundreds of millions, right? You want that, you want to create as much profit as possible on each deal. So if I'm coming to Kyle and I say, Kyle says, Kyle has a $500,000 house that he wants $300,000 for, because in his world, he'd be ecstatic. He lives, let's say Kyle lives in Fargo, North Dakota, and this property is in Florida, and he hasn't been to the property. It was a family property, and it's just a pain in his side, and it would give him nothing but joy to get rid of this thing for anything that he can get out of it, right? And he says, I want $300,000 because that's what the tax record says. And we all know that the tax record doesn't necessarily mean the market value of the property, but the tax record says 300,000. And he's like, I want that. Well, great. I'm looking at that deal as an investor that says, man, there's a $200,000 spread on this property. But when I have my license, I have a fiduciary responsibility to Kyle to say, hey, Kyle, oh, by the way, your property's worth $500,000. You should really think about that. Right. And not that I'm trying to take Kyle for a $200,000 ride. And he still may say, hey, I want $300,000. But if somebody saw that and said, well, that was worth 500 and you only paid 300 for it, and they didn't know the full story, they could make a big stink, and you could potentially end up in hot water because they maybe not know that you did exercise your fiduciary responsibility. So with us having our license, it's very easy. We disclose, hey, Kyle, you could get way more money for this property if you just listed it with an agent. You'd actually net more.
Yep.
We are not the highest and best offer for you. We are the easy button. We're the convenience, but for convenience, you pay a little bit more, right? Or you're going to get less take home just for the ease of the transaction. So again, not that that's a big deal, but it's just another potential red flag area that could trip you up if you weren't a person that fully disclosed everything and were upfront with all your clients.
Yeah, and I think that we've both found ourselves in a place where we haven't necessarily had the one-mindedness that some might have if they just decided to be a real estate investor. And I've thought about that, man. I always wanted to get into real estate agency just because I wanted to be a real estate investor. And I've been challenged on that before, where somebody said, why didn't you just become a real estate investor and stay a real estate investor? And I was like, well, I needed capital. And this was my answer to capital. But man, if you just get to stay in that one lane, to your point, Mike, you don't have to be educated on all of the other X's and O's of fiduciary responsibility and taking care of clients, which I love, by the way, because it's allowed both of us to be open books and honestly treat the marketplace with the highest integrity possible. But to your point, man, real estate investors just playing the real estate investor game they're solving the same problem. It's just that they have less hoops, less things to jump through. And I will say, if you're thinking in your head, hey, I could just be a real estate agent and then not really learn that stuff, that's where you can get into a bunch of trouble just by being ignorant. And then I would say that's definitely not the right path if you're not willing to, take that license seriously, because having a real estate license is a professional license in our community with helping people buy and sell assets that are some of the biggest ones in their lives. So it really does have some weight to it.
Yeah, it's the most amount of money that'll trade their hands throughout their lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And I think that your explanation too about being an open book, so that con that I just mentioned that could potentially trip a lot of people up, has actually become a pro for guys like you and I who are completely open book when we go to investment properties, because it gives us another tool in our tool belt, right? So if I
Yeah.
show up to a property and I say, Kyle, I'm going to give you $300,000 for this $500,000 property. You say, Mike, that's not really going to get it done for me. I'm going to need 450. Well, Kyle, like, so I have my hat on, right? I have my investor hat on. I just flip that thing around and now I'm realtor Mike. And I say, well, here's the deal. The only way to get you $450,000 is we're going to take this asset and we're going to list it for 500,000 because that's what I think it could trade for on the market. And after all your fees and closing costs and everything, you're going to net your 450 that you need. So now what that does is it turns a 0% opportunity for our investment company that was going to not get us any money. We can pull a 3% commission, half of the 6%, right? We can pull a 3% commission on that listing opportunity, which then creates an opportunity for one of the agents in our office. It creates a little bit of revenue for us as a company to bring in more revenue. To maybe it doesn't pay for our marketing budget, but it helps offset some of the marketing budget. So in that same fashion, it becomes a pro because it's another tool in our tool belt, which then creates more opportunities for other people in our world, right? So then our agent gets a listing, and off that listing, that agent gets to do an open house and picks up another buyer, which may lead to another deal. So the same thing, by not having it, that could get in the way for some people, by being an open book and being completely transparent with everything we do with all of our clients, it actually creates another opportunity for us by having our license. It's another tool in the tool belt.
Yeah, and that was such a great explanation of how you can get to a place in your business, like Mike just described, where you start to vertically integrate these different things and start hugging the different revenue streams, which is where Mike's at. And you can tell because it would only take you a couple times sitting in that living room talking to someone that wants to sell, and you give them an offer for 300 and they say that ain't going to do it, and you have no other way to serve them, before it really starts to make sense to say, well, what if I had a real estate investment or a real estate agent partner? Or what if I was a real estate agent and we could serve them here or here? Not to mention, like you talked about being a contractor. Oh, wait, what if we needed to fix up the house in order to sell it here? You know, and there's just, people always want options. And heck, that's what I want. I want options. And I think that that's such an amazing thing as entrepreneurs that you start to learn. I can give you a buffet line, and now any problem that you have that you want solved, generally I have a solution, and you just pick which one you want. And that's 100%. So good, man.
Another pro that I just thought about as you were talking was the ability to refer clients across the country, right? You can refer. So Kyle has his license. I have my license, and I know I have a best friend from high school who's leaving high school and moving to Fargo to start their job after college, maybe, or buy a house. And I say, hey, I got a guy, right? Everybody needs somebody that's got a guy. And so Kyle's my guy there. Well, Kyle can represent them. I trust Kyle. I have a relationship with Kyle. But I don't live in the Fargo MLS. Like, I don't live in that area. I don't know anything, but because I have my license, I can refer a deal to Kyle, and Kyle can pay me 25% referral fee because we're licensed to license. So I can create another revenue stream that goes exactly into what you're saying with vertical integration. So now, essentially, I can service any real estate client all over the country as long as I have my license and I partner with somebody in that market that has their license. So that's another pro.
And people don't know that. I mean, and that's a really cool way to serve people, not only because it's an amazing way to continue to build your business from afar, but also to connect people with people you trust. I've loved referring people, like giving the handhold to someone moving to Minneapolis or someone even moving to Arizona, and knowing that they're going to be working with someone that gives them the same level of service that we're going to give them. And then there's a financial win there. And so that's a huge consideration for people that maybe have a large network and have people moving to different areas of the country, or maybe even consistently. Maybe you're a part of a business where you see this happening. It's like, man, there's really cool thought based on what Mike just said there. That's really good, man. So, I mean, here's the thing, Mike. What's our take on this? If we had to say to get your license or not to get your license, I want us each to kind of give our like answer to people, our final answer based on how you feel. How would you advise someone? And again, you're probably the part here is we don't get to hear who's considering. We don't get to ask them questions. But overall speaking, I want us to give the audience kind of our final 2 cents on actually getting your license or not.
I think if this is gonna be an avenue that you go, if real estate investing is gonna be a full-time thing for you and you can foresee yourself doing it for the long haul, and you're a person of integrity, authenticity, and transparency, I think that in the long run, your real estate license will help you more than it will hurt you. If you're not somebody who has integrity, authenticity, transparency, you're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble. And those people aren't listening to this podcast anyway. So I think more often than not, it is going to help you. It might not be directly something that's monetarily help, right? Because you're going to have to spend money to get this license, and you might not save that money by listing a property one year. You might be quote unquote out $1,000. But I think what it opens up for you then opportunities is probably going to outweigh not having it. Now, that doesn't mean I want to be very clear. Just because I think that it will help you more than it will hurt you in the long run, this answer could change tomorrow. If somebody came and debated me, I could see a different side of it, whatever. But I also don't want people to take that and say, well, I can't get my real estate license, so I'm not going to invest. Like you don't have to have it. Yes, I think it will. I want to be clear. I think it will help you more than it will hurt you, but I don't think it's a prerequisite for you to get into the game.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's huge, man. I really like how you put that. And when I'm thinking about this, it's hard for me to give a prescription. It's a hard question to ask. And so I lean on my experience. And this is what happened to me. I was an engineer out of college. I got a job as an engineer, and I was really frustrated in that role for a lot of different reasons. It just wasn't bringing out the best in me. It wasn't something that gave me energy each day. And so based on a lot of frustration around the role I was in, I needed to make a change. And here's the thing about real estate investing. I knew that I wanted to be a real estate investor, and a lot of people listening to this might be at a job right now that they're saying, I know I want to be a real estate investor, or I am, and I want to scale. But you need to have consistent income in order to pour into investing and building an asset portfolio. And so I needed to decide, should I be an engineer and pour into that as I go? Or could I jump into a different world, a different vocation, being sales, and have a faster path? And for me, my answer was yes to that. And that was based on some personality tests that said, hey, you could probably kick it in the sales gig. You could learn. I joined a team that taught me a lot of stuff about it. So I was able to just shift into a different career in sales in order to create capital that fueled my real estate investor journey. Now, if you have a job that's doing well and you don't mind it, maybe you have great people that you're working with and you don't necessarily have this pain point, I think you can completely partner with some great real estate agents in your area, some people that are professionals that are doing this, leverage them to help you find deals and build your portfolio, and stay in your world, continuing to create income and start to build those other bridges of passive income as you're staying in your job, not necessarily getting an additional license or changing your vocation. That's my answer. Agree.
I mean, man, right. It's real work, right? It's full-time gig to do this on a daily basis, right? So it's not something that'd be taken lightly. And if you're in a position where you're making a lot of money, but you want to have exposure to the real estate market, find somebody like me, find somebody like Kyle, find somebody that you trust and that's always raising money for some type of project coming up, and take advantage of all the benefits that real estate can offer, but also don't have to partake in any of the dirty work on the front end. You just have to write a check and just receive checks in the mail for the rest of your life.
There you go. And we can both agree, man, if you're looking for freedom, I know at a recent event with Front Row Dads, they talked about 3X freedom: financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom. Some of this stuff we're talking, real estate investing, is exactly what we're talking about. This is where you can achieve some of that 3X freedom, that flexibility. Here's the thing, though. It's a slow and steady process. This is not the one on the internet or on TikTok right now that's going, hey, learn how to make $500 a month right now and do nothing, the lazy way. You know, like, this is something where it's a slow build, but I also think that it's the most proven way to build wealth ever. Mike and I didn't come up with this idea. We just jumped on the train, as many before us have and mentored us to do. And it's been awesome. It's cool to hear some of the pivots and things that you've got going on in Appleton. Man, Mike, would you agree? I mean, real estate investing has been something in your world that's really it's changed your outlook, changed your stars, right?
Yeah, without a doubt, man. I I echo every sentiment that you just mentioned. It's been it's the vehicle that we've chosen. There's probably a lot of other vehicles that'll be coming and going along the way, right? But it's definitely a part of the puzzle that'll never go away.